I gotta say it. The conversation you're avoiding is probably killing your relationship. You know that one. The sex talk that you've been putting off for weeks, maybe months, maybe even years. The thing that you want to ask for but can't find the words to say. The issue that creates distance between you and your partner. And most men think that they're protecting their relationship by staying silent in this capacity, in this part of your relationship. But you're not. You're actually building walls by keeping whatever it is that you're desiring sexually secret. Welcome back to The Naked Connection. This is the show that supports driven men to reach sexual mastery and build deep connections. It's Kirsten, and before we go any further, take a moment and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. Today, I'm going to be giving you a bulletproof system for having a difficult conversation about sex. This is my 3-part communication framework. It is a proven method that really transforms those awkward, terrifying, uncomfortable sex talks into actually opportunities for deeper intimacy and more wild sex. So if you want to learn how to talk about sex with your partner without that fear, how to ask for what you want in bed with confidence, or how to turn difficult conversations into relationship breakthroughs, this episode is here for you. Let's get some. Let's first start by talking about why we're so fucking bad at these difficult conversations in the first place. Most of us make one of these 3 critical mistakes when trying to discuss sex in relationships. First is the blame. We say things like, "You never want to try anything new," or "Why don't you initiate sex enough?" right off the bat. But when you do that, you're putting your partner on the defensive instead of creating space for open communication about sex. Second, assumptions are being made. And this is where you think things like, "She must not be attracted to me anymore," or "She obviously doesn't enjoy the thing that we used to do." We create entire narratives in our heads without actually having the conversation about what we both want sexually. And the third is you hint. This is where you beat around the bush with vague statements like, "I've been thinking about spicing things up lately," or "Maybe we could try something different." These types of statements leave your partner guessing about what the hell it is that you actually want when you really want to be direct about your desires. This vagueness, this hinting creates ambiguity and uncertainty. And I always like to say, a confused shopper never buys. Okay, so all of these 3 approaches fail for the same reason. They don't create safety for real sex talks. And here's what I know after working with tons of couples and men on sex and relationships is that without safety, there's no real chance for intimacy. Without safety, there's no openness. And without openness, these conversations about sex with your partner will always feel like a risk and will continue to be terrifying or scary or uncomfortable. And the root cause isn't that you're bad at relationship communication. It's that you're going in without a clear strategy for how to communicate about sex and intimacy. Chances are that in some way, shape, or form, you're kind of winging it, and that's why it can often feel so overwhelming. But here's the good news. Once you have this proven communication framework I'm about to get into with you that dives into communicating about sex, these types of conversations, they might not be easy breezy beautiful, but they are going to become more manageable. They become more about opportunities to deepen your connection rather than potential relationship landmines. So let's dive into this framework. The first part is what I call the no blame opener. The goal here is really simple. You want to create a container for the conversation by taking ownership of your desires and your feelings, rather than making your partner responsible for a perceived problem. So this is really crucial when you're learning how to initiate sex talks. So here's what this might actually sound like in practice. So instead of saying something like, Why don't we have sex as much anymore? Which immediately puts your partner on the defensive. You could say something like this. Hey, I've been thinking about our connection lately, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page. I love when we're able to be close to each other, and I would love to talk more about that. Or you could try something like, I've been feeling a bit disconnected from you lately, and our intimacy is really important to me. I would love to talk about ways we can reconnect with each other. So, right off the bat, do you notice the difference here? Instead of making the conversation about maybe what she's not doing or what's not happening anymore, you're making it about what you value and desire. You're inviting her into a conversation rather than like putting her on some kind of trial or chopping block. And even though they both have the same sort of intention, which is to talk about your sexual desires, they initiate and start the conversation from a totally different space and energy. So this is how you discuss intimacy with your partner without creating that defensiveness. So the non-blame opener has 3 key components to it. And like, if you need to, take notes on this. The first is that you take ownership of your feelings using I statements. So I'm needing this, I'm missing this, I'm noticing this, I'm feeling this kind of way. Then you express what you value about your connection, like sharing what it is that's important to you, what you know that you really value about your partner in your relationship. And then you frame it as an invitation to collaborate, not like a demand to change. This approach immediately signals to your partner that this is not about criticism. It's actually about building something together. It creates more of a sense of curiosity instead of that defensive wall building, which is really, really essential for having healthy sex talks. I think curiosity is one of the most important elements to bring into sexual conversations. And guys, I cannot stress this enough. The tone that you use here matters just as much as the words that you're saying. And when I say this is not about manipulation or using some like technique to get what you want. This is about genuine connection. So your partner can feel the difference between authentic openness and strategic maneuvering. So when you approach this, when you think about the opener that you want to have and you've broken down your 3 components, connect with what it is that you are feeling in the moment and show up presenting that tone. So maybe you are actually feeling really angry, right? Before you step into this conversation, like allow yourself to experience that anger because it's totally valid. If you're in a long-term relationship and you're not having sex, I understand why you're angry, frustrated, irritated. Then take a moment and connect with like what is underneath that anger. Because chances are that there's something beneath that anger that is causing you to feel this way. So is it this sense of loneliness? Is it this sense of disappointment? Is it a sadness that you're missing something that you no longer have? Connecting with that and using that tone when you're communicating with your partner. All right, you guys, let's talk about something that nobody wants to admit. Poor quality sheets are a total mood killer. Think about it. You just had incredible, steamy, wild sex, and now you're both laying there in a pool of sweat and everything else, just soaking into that scratchy, uncomfortable sheet set. Just not exactly the vibe if you want your girl to actually stay in bed with you or come back for more. So if you want to create a bedroom that she never wants to leave, you need to think about every detail. And that starts with your sheets. Cozy Earth's bamboo sheets are temperature regulated and made from bamboo. They naturally wick away heat and moisture from your body, so you sleep several degrees cooler. No more sticky, uncomfortable nights. And look, Black Friday has come early at Cozy Earth, so stack code Naked Connection on top of their entire site-wide sale for up to 40% off. And with a 100-night sleep trial, you can try these sheets risk-free. But trust me, you won't want to return them. Ever since I got my own sheet set, I haven't been able to sleep in anything else because they are so amazing. So head on over to cozyearth.com and use code NAKEDConnection at checkout. And if you get a post-purchase survey, mention the Naked Connection is where you heard about Cozy Earth. Be sure to wrap the ones that you love in luxury with Cozy Earth. The second part to this communication framework is the desire-focused question. So once you've created this safe container with your opener, and maybe I'll just preface this, you put out the opener and maybe they say, hey, I can tell that this is important to you. Can we carve time out later this week to talk about it? Or maybe they're ready to go in that moment. Either way, once you sit down to dive deeper into the conversation, this is where the second part comes in. So this is where most men either get too vague or too specific when they're trying to figure out how to ask for what you want in bed. And the key here is to focus on possibility and mutual desire rather than deficiencies or demands. So let me give you some examples to break this down. Instead of saying something like, can you try to do that thing more in bed? Which feels like a performance review and also really vague, that thing in bed, like we don't know what you're talking about. Ask something like this. Is there anything you've been curious about trying? Any fantasies you'd want to explore together? And notice that this is a question about, oh, not only do I have desires, but I'm curious about what yours are too. And opening the conversation to explore more together about what might be interesting to bring into your sex life. Or if you want to be way more specific, coming to the table with this, hey, I was really thinking I have this desire. I'm actually a little bit uncomfortable sharing it with you, but I think it would be really fun to try, and then insert your desire. How does that sound to you? No pressure. I just think I've been curious about it. So if you notice, the beauty of this desire-focused question format is that it opens up space for both of you to share what it is that you are desiring or curious about. It's not just about getting your needs met, it's about discovering what you both desire. And this is how you have confident sex conversations that strengthen your relationship. So instead of walking into the conversation being like, hey, I really want to have this conversation with you. I don't understand why we don't have sex as much as we used to anymore. Noticing the difference there between that and, hey, I've been really curious about trying some role play. Would you ever be open to exploring a fantasy? And if so, like, what kind of role play would you want to do? I have a few in mind, but I'm curious about what comes up for you. Like, it's more curiosity, it's more exploratory, it's more exciting. And also, do you notice that we're not pointing out a distinctive problem that someone is or is not doing? And that's not to say that we're never addressing a problem, but it's to say that we're creating a space where we can have conversations that just talk about sex in general, first and foremost, and explore then, as you get further and further into the conversation, maybe some of the roadblocks that have been coming up for you. This is where once you've had some of this elements of conversation, later on you can layer in the pieces of like, hey, is there anything that you're wanting or worried about or wanting to address in our sex life? She's like, yeah, it's this. Or like, no, not really. And you go, okay. And then you can share maybe what yours is. Like, I'm finding myself really wanting to be intimate with you more often. I know we both have crazy lives, and I'm wondering, is that something that you're wanting too? Having some of these desire-focused questions is really the second part of this communication framework, and actually I just think it's a great way to get the juices going in the conversation. So I'll share with you a few more variations for discussing intimacy. So you could ask, what's something that makes you feel most connected to me? You could ask, if we could design our ideal intimate experience together, what would that look like? Or you could ask, I love it when we insert specific thing. Is there more of that you would want to explore? So for example, that could look like, I love it when I get to tie you up. Is there more of that you would want to explore? The key here is that your questions should really be open-ended. We're not looking for like yes or no questions. Keep them open-ended to give your partner room to think and respond truthfully, but specifically enough that you're not leaving them guessing what it is that you're really asking about in your sex life. And an important piece here is to be prepared for any response. Your partner might be excited about your suggestion. They might need to think about it, or they might not be interested. All of these responses are truthful and valid, and how you handle them determines whether this conversation brings you closer together or creates more distance. So remember, this framework isn't about guaranteeing you get what you want. It's about guaranteeing that you have healthy, connected conversations about what you both want sexually. Now, the third part is the collaborative solution close. So this brings us to this third piece of your communication framework. This is arguably the most important part of this entire process, and I think it's where most people kind of drop the ball in their relationship communication. Because a successful conversation about sex with your partner isn't about one person winning or getting their way or getting what they want. It's about finding a solution that works for both of you. And sometimes maybe that is you present something that you really want and they're like a hell yes to it. Cool. However, sometimes that might mean exploring another option or solution. And this part is all about really having active listening and working as a team to improve your sex life. Here's what this looks like, and I break it down into 3 parts. First is that you listen actively, and I mean like really listen. So after you've asked a couple of those desire-directed questions, while you're hearing the response, cue into what it is that she's saying. Like, be present and actually take in what it is that she's saying without feeling the need to think about how to respond to that. This might mean that there's going to be more silence in between your responses to one another, and that's okay. Knowing that you're taking the time to really hear the person before actually responding. And you can also practice summarizing what you're hearing to make sure you're understanding. And this might sound like super structured of a conversation, but it's really important because so often we misunderstand what the other person is saying. Or sometimes someone says something and then when they hear it back, they're like, oh shit, I did say that, but that was not what I meant. So you could say something like, what I'm hearing you say is this. You really love having sex with me, but you finding that only on Friday and Saturday are you like totally open to be more exploratory. Is that right? Or it sounds like you're feeling pretty overwhelmed and stressed, and the idea of building out a BDSM bedroom is kind of too much for you right now, but it sounds like you might be open to a variation of that. Just those are some examples that come to my mind. So once you've listened actively and reflected back what you've heard, this is the second part where you're going to collaborate on solutions. So exploring like, where can you both meet each other? So using phrases like, what do you think we could do to make this happen? How can we both work on this together? Like if you're coming into this conversation wanting to have more sex, and that does come up in conversation and your partner's like, yeah, I recognize that we haven't been having a lot of sex, and I do think it's important for us to prioritize that. I'm struggling right now to take that initiative. You can ask, how can we both work on this together? And then enter into the conversation about that. Or you could ask, what would need to be in place for you to feel comfortable trying that? Like if you have a fantasy or a fetish or a kink you want to explore, and they seem like, I don't know, maybe, asking that question is going to be really helpful. And then third and finally, end positively regardless of the outcome. And that's going to sound like I'm being like a Pollyanna over here. But this is what I mean. When you finish the conversation, you can offer something up like this. Regardless of if they say no, if they reject you, here's an invitation of what you can say. Thank you for being really open with me about this. I totally respect your decision, and what you just shared with me is really important too. I love that we can have these hard conversations together. Now, here's what I want you to understand is that this isn't just a communication tactic for sex talks. This is relationship building, because every time you have one of these conversations successfully, you're depositing trust into your relationship account. You're showing your partner that difficult topics about intimacy can be a safe thing for them to explore with you, which is why I think it is important to reflect something positive at the end or something like real at the end, that shows, hey, this was not easy to talk about. And you know what? I really appreciate that we were able to still have the conversation. Because that means that in the future, knowing that, hey, even though these conversations are uncomfortable, they end with respect, with love, with care, goes so far in being able to continue having these types of conversations. And if the conversation doesn't go the way that you had hoped, I like to still consider that a win, because now you have more information. Now you know where your partner stands sexually, and you can work with reality instead of assumptions. So the collaborative solution close is also going to set you up for future conversations about sex. Maybe your partner isn't ready to try something today, but because you handled the conversation with that respect, with that level of care, they will feel safer bringing up their own desires later on. To wrap things up here, I'm just going to give you a quick example of how this whole communication framework for sex sounds in practice. All right, part 1. Hey, babe. How you doing? I've been thinking about our connection lately, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page. I love it when we're intimate together, and I would really love to talk about ways that we can keep exploring that together. I was wondering, is there anything that you've been curious about trying, or any fantasies that you would want to explore together? I've actually been thinking that it might be fun to try some new positions, but I'm actually interested in what sounds exciting to you. This is when you could listen to that response and turn to that dialogue, and then sharing, hey, that sounds really interesting. What do you think we could do to actually make this happen? How can we create space for more of what we both want here? See how that flows. You're creating safety, you're exploring possibilities together, and you're working as a team. That is what great relationship communication skills look like when you're discussing sex with your partner, and frankly, like any topic beyond sex with your partner. All right, you guys, let's wrap this up. This 3-part communication framework, in summary, start with that non-blame opener that creates that safety and allows you to take ownership of your feelings. Then you move into that desire-focused question that explores possibilities rather than pointing out problems. And then finally close with that collaborative solution that positions you as a teammate working towards mutual satisfaction. I know learning how to talk about sex can be uncomfortable at first, and these difficult conversations do really require a level of openness, and that openness is going to feel risky. But this is what I have learned. The men who master this skill, the ones who have the confident conversations about sex and intimacy, these are the men who have the deepest, most satisfying sex lives and relationships. Your homework this week is really simple. Try out this framework for discussing intimacy with your partner. Start with something small and low stakes if you are like, I need to build confidence up here first. Totally get that. But I really challenge you, use it, practice it. Because great lovers, as you know, they are not born. They are made through communication, through attention, and through genuine care for your partner's experience. If this episode helped you learn how to initiate sex talks, please share it with a friend, share it with your partner. And if you want to dive deeper into mastering sexual communication and building incredible connections, make sure that you've subscribed to the show. Until next time, you guys, remember, a truly confident man is one who can have any conversation with grace and openness. This is Kirsten, and until next time, let's get some. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Naked Connection. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Trust me on this, your sex life and that special someone in your life will thank you for it. And if you really love the show, please take a moment and leave a 5-star review or a written review and let me know what you think. It would mean so much to me and this show. Until next time, happy connecting.